Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
It's good to be together again. Welcome to our Sunday morning worship service brought to you by the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of York. My name is Steve Snell, and I will be helping to lead the service today. Like many of you, I discovered Unitarian Universalism well into my life. 1975 at the Lancaster congregation I attended, and all of a sudden decided that's what I've been all along. Joining here when I moved to York in 1987, I have been an active member here ever since. I keep coming back because of the community, because of the theology, and for the potential for this congregation and this faith to make a difference in the world. Our mission here at UUCY is to be a transformational faith community that serves the religious and spiritual needs of a wide and diverse group of people. A community that earns recognition as a leader in the work of social justice and guides our children to become more engaged global citizens. If you were here for the first time to our Sunday morning Zoom service, because I know we're being Zoomed as well as live today, please feel free to introduce yourself by writing your name in the chat box and anything else you would like us to know about you. Everyone joining us virtually is also invited to type into the chat box matters of the heart that we will share again later in the service. Jim Hershey will be reading them later today. Chalice lighting. It is customary whenever Unitarian Universalists gather together, we begin by lighting a candle in our chalice. Our candle flame represents the flaming chalice that is the symbol of the living tradition of our faith. We also invite everyone at home to light a candle as we share our chalice words today. Our chalice lighting words today are from Albert Schweitzer. He was a Unitarian, not with a capital U, but with a small u. Check out his theology. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the candle flame within us. Nice. It's time for all ages.
Thank you, Matt Shinneman. All three of your suggestions inspired this story. Not long ago, in a town near a great river, there was a small church built by people with a purpose. They wanted a church of their very own. Almost by accident, they found a place to build their church. A place that could have been a useful parking lot or strip mall. But they felt this was a chosen place for them, a quiet, green place in the midst of strife. One day, a grandfather who lived nearby took Evan, who became 9 years old today, Evan's sister, Grace, who is 5, to the playground at the church. "Why did you build this church, Pops? And why does it have a playground?" the boy asked. "I did not build this church, Evan, but we continue building this church. We add to the church every day, and we repair broken and worn out pieces. I did not build the playground, but I helped in my own way. Mommies and daddies built this playground for their children. It is a fine playground. Why do they keep that old building when they built a new church, Pops?" "Some old things are sturdy and elegant, like Pops." The children laughed. Why did you build that old stone wall over there? The children asked. And that big round stone place beside it. The stone wall was built long before Pops was born. Some of my friends repaired that wall to make us remember other friends who have moved on. One of my special friends built that magical stone circle. It is a place people go to seek peace. Your mommy and daddy were married at the very center of that huge circle. If no one lives here, asked Grace, why do you have a garden? Other friends work hard to grow food for hungry people who live nearby, healthy food. Pops, if you did not build this church, or play on the swings, or build the wall, or the circle, why do you come here? Evan asked. Evan, one day I was not happy here, and an old woman answered that question for me. She said that every single time she comes to this church, she sees something she loves, like the sparkle in your eye. She said she feels stronger and happier because of this place. When she said that, I realized there was some purpose missing inside me, but I did not know what it is or was. Very slowly, I opened my own eyes and I saw that something else is here, something that is harder to see. Where is it, Pops? What does it look like? Show us, Pops. I finally understood what the old woman was really telling me. She was telling me that first you have to show up. Then, after you show up, you must open your eyes and see the other children and their moms and dads. Listen to the stories of their lives. Try to bring something with you to share with them, both friends and people who might become your friends. Pops, the answer to every single question we ask you about this church was making, keeping, and building things with friends. Yes, Evan, that is where it is. That is what it looks like. Happy birthday.
Well, we've come to that moment in our service when we ask you to make a financial contribution to our church. Your generosity helps to defray UUCY's operating expenses and also helps out organizations in our community that are engaged in work that is keeping with our Unitarian Universalist principles and values. Our Share of the Plate partner during the months of July and August is UU Justice PA. Okay, so Share the Plate. That's like if Dan Fink puts in like $1 million in the basket, 500,000 stays here at the UUCY, and the other $500,000 that goes to UU Justice PA. So who is UU Justice PA? They are a group of Unitarian Universalists with a mission statement: pursuing justice by voting, advocating, and making just public policies. So who is UU Justice PA? I just did that part. What do? They work at increasing awareness to having open, honest government which represents everyone. And what does that look like? UU Justice PA works with a focus of 6 teams. Gun violence prevention. Gun violence is an increasing danger in our country. The advocate for common sense measures to keep guns out of dangerous hands. Environmental justice. Their mission is to educate and engage Unitarian Universalists and other concerned citizens about the urgent need for environmental and climate action. We must strive to live our lives in harmony with ecological limits and to lobby elected officials for sound environmental policies. Criminal justice reform. They are working to end mass incarceration, especially of people of color, due to unjust drug laws. Reproductive justice. They address reproductive justice because these are human rights issues. They work to improve maternal and child health, to support the rights of individuals to express their sexuality without fear of oppression. Economic justice. They join in the struggle to ensure that all Pennsylvanians have the basic needs of survival, access to a living wage work, and a right to organize for justice and dignity on the job. Good government, with a special focus on voting district reform and increasing voter participation. When everyone votes, democracy wins. Be for fair districts and against voter suppression laws. Voting should be easy. The meeting dates and Zoom information are available on their website, uujusticepa.org. Stand up, speak out, march on, make it so. We hope that you will make whatever donation you are able to as we continue to build a better world, both within this congregation and throughout our state. No donation is too small. Know that your financial gifts will be used wisely and well. In fact, I tell you what, let's do this like we do it at men's group, and it seems to be very effective. Place your valuables into the basket as it passes before you. Just kidding.
There are places I remember all my life, though some have changed, some forever, not for better. All my life and gone remain. All these places have their moments with lovers and friends I still can recall. Some are dead and some are living. In my life I've loved them all. But of all these friends and lovers, there is no one compares with you. And these memories lose their meanings when I think of love as something new. Though I know I'll never lose affection for people and things that went before. I know I'll often stop and think about them. In my life, I love you more.
Morning, everybody. I first came to this church in August of 2011 and joined in 2012. My name's Chris Burns. I live in, was raised in Hanover, PA, zip code 17331. And it's so good to see your faces. I haven't seen many of you since before the pandemic in March. I have not stepped foot in this building since before then. It's good to be here. My first task this morning is to thoroughly lower your expectations. When Russ McKnight, our fearless leader, sent out an email some 4 or 5 weeks ago, I thought I would be traveling on this date. My wife's very special, not to be mentioned, birthday was this past week, and I thought we would be on the West Coast with our children. So I didn't initially volunteer. And then about 3 weeks ago, I said, hey, Russ, it looks like we're not going to travel. If you want my help, I'll be some support. And I think it was 2 weeks ago. By the way, there were literally 100 emails that came in over this service, and I honestly didn't read them, I have to admit. But there was one that said OOS, which I know is code word for order of service. And I read it, and here I am. I'm on the podium. Thanks, Russ. But honestly, it's a measure of trust. Russ knew I'd get to what was important, and so anyway, but I hope your expectations are thoroughly lowered. Our reading this morning comes from biblical Paul's 13th chapter of his first letter to the church at Corinth. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will pass away. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will pass away. For knowledge is imperfect, and our prophecy is imperfect. But when the perfect comes, the imperfect will pass away. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, I gave up childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall understand fully, even as I've been fully understood. So faith, hope, love, abide, these three, but the greatest of these is love. Good morning again. In February of 2014, UUCY Director of Religious Education, Stephen Mead, asked me to lead an exploratory meeting for a possible men's group at a Wellspring Wednesday evening event. 18 men participated on a weekday night, displaying a strong interest. Incidentally, many or most of those men are here today. So at 8 a.m. on March 8, 2014, the UUCY men's group held its first meeting in the Carriage House. 7.5 years later, the group has met on the first and third Saturday ever since. The last year and a half meeting on Zoom. Meetings have been held even when the date falls on a holiday, and even when the weather was so bad that only those traveling on foot could attend. George Holloman remembers that. Participation, despite COVID, is continuous and strong, and that says something. The order and content of our gatherings evolved during the first year and has changed very little, even though the leadership of the group has changed every year after the first year and three-quarter that I occupied the leadership. Different volunteers perform all duties. Somebody opens the carriage house and makes coffee a little after 7. Another person brings breakfast at 7:30. Men trickle in to eat and chat until 8. The chairs in the parlor have been formed into a large oval, and promptly at 8, men are called to circle by the sounds of a musical bowl. There's chalice lighting and check-in, but the feature of every meeting is a member-led discussion that is bookended by readings that are provided by another member. The readings are often as memorable as the discussions. They are coordinated with the topic of the day and mark a transition from the worldly to the sacred and back again at the end of the discussions. The discussions are rich. The formal meetings ends promptly at 9:30. People linger. The group is open to all men, whether they're UU members or not. It has been led by non-UU members. The group exists for its own purpose while acknowledging its obligations to the supporting UU community. We take a collection at every meeting and make regular contributions to UUCY. Pre-COVID, occasional social events drew spouses and children into the mix. A barn dance, 2 Super Bowl parties, Amish horse-drawn hay rides, and other things are social offshoots of men's group. Including my own stint, the group has had 7 different leadership teams. Today, special thanks go to Bob Kruger and Russ McKnight, who guided us through the COVID period. The group remains strong as it regains the joy of in-person meetings. What do I think bring men out to men's group? What is its sustaining purpose? I offer a few thoughts. I personally have been engaged in the kind of conversation that we have at men's group since my early 30s and helped start a similar group at All Saints Episcopal Church in Hanover before coming here. My first men's group, however, was in the cockpit of a Boeing 737. That's when I began to hear my fellow pilots raise subjects with a different feel than the usual male chatter on sports, sex, hobbies, and politics. The cockpit was not a gab fest while the plane hurtled down the runway on takeoff or landing. But during long periods of cruise flight, there was conversation. Talk flared up and then died out, delivering the 2 pilots back to the chamber of their own skulls. Anyone who talked all the time would have been unwelcome company. Among the usual cockpit chatter, however, was a different kind of conversation. This type of conversation was not a daily event, but frequent enough to be recognized as a recurring phenomenon. Not with every pilot, but with many. I gave these conversations a name, talking about the important things. There was more to these conversations than intellectual repartee. The speaker would enter a realm of deep personal meaning. What life meant to them, what they had learned, how they'd made important decisions, how they exercised freedom in the face of obstacles. The quality of these conversations transcended their content. It was about tone and the manner of the speaker's revelations, and it was an appeal to something above worldly striving. The revelatory thoughts of which I've spoken seemed to come out of silence, as if the mind was unaware that private thought had been spoken aloud. And yet these words were meant to be heard. These were not tell-all confessions. They were not declarations. They were not plaintive or meant to be convincing. They were just laid out there in open space to be seen, taken or not taken. They were a fellow human dealing with the complexities of living. Mixed in with the discussion about the important things was revealing of a human being. The conversation announced, "Here I am. This is how I've lived." These conversations came with an implicit calling of a witness, and they enjoined the participants in a sense of higher meaning. Today, I'm convinced that conversation about the important things represent an underlying human need. For me, the men's group and the liturgy of its regular meetings, the wonderful carriage house, and these enchanting grounds is a setting where special connections can and do occur. Not in every meeting, not between every member, but frequently enough, sometimes in words, sometimes in actions. When these connections occur, they have the same 3 components that I've described. They announce, "This is how I've lived." They call a witness, and they implicitly draw the participants into a sense of shared higher meaning. These conversations are about human morality, not in a punitive, authoritarian, Ten Commandment kind of way, but in the completely unavoidable necessity for humans to live their lives in a moral context. That is, we humans are value-choosing creatures. We are constantly choosing how to spend our limited human energies, prioritizing one thing over another. Contrary to modern individualistic thought, these value choices are not private property, somehow cordoned off from others. Our own value choices are part of a rich dynamic collectively known as the human condition. And this plurality of value choices is the architecture of humanity and its future. We do not choose in isolation, and that is where men's group comes in. That is where talking about the important things has real, lasting import. I return to our opening reading. As portrayed by the Apostle Paul, childhood and manhood can be seen as binary events. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. When I became a man, I gave up childish ways. There's a trap here that I doubt the writer intended. That trap is to believe that we are grown up now, that we see clearly, that we have moved from childhood to adulthood in one clean break. To my understanding, there's always temptation to accord sanctity to our own beliefs, to believe that we've arrived at adulthood and need to explore no further. In the chamber of our own skulls, we can resolve all the rights and wrongs of the world. In the plurality of conversation, however, especially among those we know and respect, we are forced to face alternative views, sometimes ceding to better ideas on what it means to live the human life. It is in this way that UUC men's group is a ministry. In Paulinian speak, we love one another and minister to one another on the walk of life. With that, it's time for me to give the microphone over to Craig. Craig Zumbrum and I were born in the same year and grew up in neighboring towns 12 miles apart. I didn't meet him until 2011. He was in Littlestown, I was in West Manheim Township, outside of Hanover. He is one of my first and longest friendships here at UUCY, and he will share what men's group means to him.
I realized listening to Chris, if this was the 1940s, I could say I was somehow sandwiched between two flyboys. I came to volunteer to talk today because I truly believe in men's group, and even though I have a little bit of the Marx Brothers in me, and I think it was the Marx Brothers that said they wouldn't belong to a club that would have anybody like them as a member, I do take great pride in showing up and being there. So my little talk is called How the Past is Influenced by the Present. Planning to write a message for a Sunday morning delivery, I discovered is a lot different from just showing up and talking. Each month on 2 Saturdays, men from the men's group congregate, and we determine that we will get up and get going to the carriage house, or more recently to the computer to Zoom together. What makes this worth talking about, I think, is how it has been a transformative experience for me. We've discussed a lot of topics, some near and dear, and some much more esoteric. Some carry obvious invitations to a trip into the past. But pondering this talk, what became clear in my mind was that we find ourselves each meeting on a two-way street at a specific intersection. It is a me and a we deal. No matter how personal the revelation or the points of a reading or the directions of a discussion, we find a connection from others around the table. I've been awestruck and more than amazed by someone else's story, suddenly igniting a long-buried set of thoughts and memories for myself. This reflection allows me to deal with an apparent, important part of the past through a new lens that has been given to me by the very essence of the men's group. In that moment of realization, the past becomes refreshed in the now, and ultimately allows for a way forward that will undoubtedly be beneficially changed for the better. In this regard, the men's group has become at times a very religious experience. What else could it be? Such a change for the good. What creates this lens, this tool for self-measurement, I asked the guys yesterday, and these were some of the words that came out of the 12 who were assembled. This thing that happens at men's group: goodness, knowing, trusting, fellowship, openness, brotherhood, fitting. Perhaps fitting is one of the most important. We often have referred to ourselves as brothers, and so I think we are. I have two half-brothers. Both mother and father remarried shortly after I was born. As the oldest and not living with either parent, I never had the luxury nor the challenges of sibling issues, not rivalries, and not any of the good things brotherhood might offer. Growing up, I admittedly missed being a brother, often with my buddies and neighbors, so rich with family. My half-brothers are 9 and 25 years my junior. But I will give credit to the men's group for helping me build something firmer with my two halves. And now, having been refreshed with non-blood kinship these fellow parishioners bring, not once have I sensed a moment of condescension nor judgment in our meetings. Challenges to ideas put forth are never personalized, but rather addressed as they are, concepts expressed with words, not tangible, not physical manifestations of something. What could be more Unitarian or more Universalist? As Brother Chris has pointed out to me on occasions, we can be a bit overly focused on our individual and our individualism issues and ideas within the denomination. Where we once even had the name Universalist, that focus on the all seems lost sometimes. I think in men's group, we recover and we rediscover and we redefine that issue. And it anneals us and it strengthens us. In one of our final readings brought by Jim Hershey, who's the master of readings, he offered some closing words that for me resonate, and these are not the precise words, but these are the way they reverberated for me. We come together free of deceit, power, pleasure, or profit. We come together unpolluted. Sounds and seems heavenly to me. And now, our leader during COVID, often far away and yet near in our hearts, Russ.
That's a hard act to follow. Craig's homily, for me, is rich in material. Thank you. He shared some observations about men's group: trust, respect, insightfulness, comfort, direction, and how these discussions guide us from the global attitudes and altitudes to a soft landing with personal advice and redirection for our daily lives. I would like to share with you a few more insights into the workings of men's group. So what are the themes of our discussions? We never know. Before, maybe a week before a meeting, the leader, a voluntary leader or chosen, announces and publishes the subject and preparation material. Sometimes we do our homework. Here are a few of the, and I'll say very ambitious, subjects from just this year. Number 1, women's liberation movement and the glass ceiling. Don't laugh. 2, the non-traditional family in the 21st century America. 3, immigration. How did your family arrive in America? 4, owning wrongfulness. How did you feel when being wrong about something when you felt you were right? And 5, what do you love most about yourself? Again, don't laugh. This is serious. It's important. For me, Craig surfaced an elusive and valuable observation of our group and any gathering of humans committed to the search for meaning, like this congregation. Together with trusted friends, I can listen to their honest and unvarnished reactions to the very same comments and stories about what is important to us right now. Somehow, for me, these unrehearsed thoughts are more impactful than carefully documented articles and stories. Men's Group allows me to reshape some of my unhelpful attitudes and memories, a way in which the present influences the past.
It's traditional to end the service by extinguishing the chalice. We invite those at home who have lit their own chalice candle to extinguish it at this time as we read in unison. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Hold your eyes.
Trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep smiling until then. Who cares about the clouds?